Okay, good morning, everyone. Sorry about that. So hopefully I'm back. Good morning to all. Let's see if I've got audio. Like, if somebody could jump in and let me know that I've got audio, that'd be nice. Looks like my connection's not good because I'm seeing me moving around in a sort of jerky way. It's kind of weird. Good sound. Thank you, Joe Estefan. Appreciate it. Okay, good. So I had to restart completely. And welcome back to Caitlin, the person I said good morning to, and thank you, Joe. All right, so Caitlin, yes, you were first in on the other video, so I said good morning to you from Germany already. So okay, so I wanted to explain a couple of things. There's been a couple of developments this week which are kind of important. The Federal Register is one of those things. Basically, there's been a new rule implemented by the government this week on the $1 entry fee for DV lottery. This will probably apply in the next entry period, but I want to talk about the timing because this is kind of weird what they're doing. So basically, they're establishing a $1 fee to enter the DV lottery program. Now, in the big beautiful bill, some of you will remember that there was a suggestion of having a $250 fee to enter the lottery, which I thought was actually really kind of outrageous and dumb and not good at all. Because $250 to enter a lottery with a 1 in 100 chance of selection is pretty poor gamble in a sense, and it is gambling. Actually, it's not even haram in some countries, would not be considered even legal from a Sharia law point of view. But also it was just like incredibly cruel to people that are relatively poor in some countries, right? $250 is a lot of money. So it's interesting that part of the bill was taken out, right? So that never became part of the big beautiful bill. It was suggested in the big beautiful bill, and the big beautiful bill was passed. Not at all beautiful. It was stupid, but never mind. That was passed. That became law, but without the $250. So now the government, out of the blue, have implemented a $1 fee. Now, if they were able to implement a fee for DV lottery entry, then why didn't they just implement the fee, when they wanted to charge $250? It's kind of weird the way that they're doing this. So anyway, on Monday, I got to know about this inclusion in the Federal Register. The Federal Register is the publicly sort of authorized place that publishes rules, changes to the rules, changes the law, and that sort of thing. So this is the official source. And on Monday, this article was published in the Register as an unpublished article, saying that it was going to be published the next day. And indeed it was, on the 16th. And so the final rule is effective from September 16th. However, there is a 30-day waiting period in these rules. So it's kind of strange. I've been trying to figure this out all week. What is their strategy here? Because the DV 2027 entry period would normally be starting at the beginning of October, roughly about the sort of 3rd, 4th, 5th of October, around about that time is when it normally starts. And it would normally be announced probably this coming week, right? If you look at last year, the DV lottery entry period was announced on the 26th of September. So they're not strictly speaking late in announcing the DV lottery entry period, but they've given themselves a couple of headaches. Number one, they wanted to implement the passport rule, which they have not implemented yet, but they've had this sort of public consultation period. And now they have implemented this new rule to charge $1, right? $1 for each entry. But the rule itself has got a 30-day waiting period. It actually says it in the rule. If we find this for a moment, 30 days. The entire department intends to implement this rule 30 days after publication. Well, how are they going to do that? And so there isn't time for them to wait 30 days. So it's kind of interesting what they've done. They've given themselves a headache. So there's a couple of things they could do. They could basically not implement this rule for DV 2027. That's a possibility. Or they implement this rule and this fee for DV 2027 and ignore that 30-day period. That's, I guess, a possibility, but it's kind of weird. Why would they give themselves that legal exposure to have the rule attacked again? I mean, it seems stupid. And lawyers have attacked mistakes like this in the past and won. The original passport rule was actually taken down because they didn't follow the procedures correctly. So as part of the procedures, they're saying in this rule, they've got to give 30 days notice. And if they do a normal entry period, there won't be 30 days notice. Now, the other thing they could do, and I have to tip my hat to a gentleman from Germany. I won't say his name, but he's a smart guy, and he was the first one that suggested to me, because of the some other rules, the passport rule, etc., that they may delay the entry period. And I have to say that's looking more and more likely that they delay the entry period. And that it doesn't start at the beginning of October and actually starts, let's say, around about mid-October, so that they would have time to implement this rule. Don't forget, they have to also, as well as implementing the rule and changing the paperwork for the rule, they also have to hook up a payment system and make sure that their DV lottery system only allows you to enter if you've paid the $1 charge. Now, they have a payment gateway. They have an ability to collect fees, but those fees, are going to be difficult to collect in some countries. I've just recently been through this on the photo application thing, the photo tool that I'm releasing shortly. It is difficult to come up with a payment system that works in every single country around the world. And I think the government are about to trip over their own shoelaces on that alone. How are they going to implement this and have that fee payable in every country in the world? People, generally speaking, don't have credit cards in some parts of the world, right? And the payment will have to be made via a credit or a debit card, I'm sure. Currently, to pay your Greencard fees, the $235 when you enter the country, you have to pay on an online system. And that system generally only accepts American-based credit cards. So, what's going to happen there? There's a whole bunch of headaches they're giving themselves. But anyway, that's kind of speculation. I'm not quite sure what's going to happen. As I say, I think they may implement their rule, they may not implement the rule, or they may just delay the whole damn thing and cause themselves that sort of delay because of trying to implement the rule. But just implementing this $1 charge, rolling it out throughout the whole world, having a payment system that works, making sure it can be accessed and paid from every country in the world, that's not a 30-day IT project, let alone all of the other stuff to do it. That's just not a 30-day project. When you've got a multinational project like that, and the government's not that good, frankly, in terms of implementing things, they've given themselves a very short timeline to do this. So it's typical Trump world. I'll talk more about that in a moment. It's ready, fire, aim all over the place. It's exactly how they operate. They're just a bunch of clowns, really. Now, $1 fee. People have asked me what I think about the $1 fee. I'm actually sort of in favor of the fee to an extent, in a way. So the $250 fee I thought was ridiculous, but $1, most people in the world can afford $1 for the entry. If the fee is $1 per entry, and that includes all the derivatives on that entry, then that's not too bad. That's going to be $2 for a married couple who are entering, both of them. They would each pay $1, $2. Okay, that's not free, but it's a reasonable sort of cost. Add to that the cost of obtaining photos for each person. That's going to be a reasonably significant investment that people will make in the DV lottery each year. But I think that's probably sort of acceptable. It's probably okay. And the $1 fee will probably have a little bit of an impact towards reducing some of the fraud that goes on, because it'll become very easy to track people who are making multiple payments. Okay, so it will become very easy to see who are the agents that are making these payments on behalf of people and so on. That, of course, is another downside of the payment system. There'll be some countries where it is very difficult for people to have a credit card to make this fee, this payment. And so the obvious thing is that some agent will set themselves up in business to say, yeah, we'll make the payment for you. We'll charge you a small fee on top of the $1. We'll charge you $2 or something, so that we'll make the payment for you. That's a problem because you're giving your personal details to an agent. That agent may or may not be scrupulous. There are some good agents and there are some very bad agents. And some agents will try and exploit you later if you become a winner, or they'll simply keep the fees. There's some countries in the world that if they could just get $1 from every person who wants to enter the lottery, that would actually do, quite nice little business, or a couple of dollars. That would be a quite nice little business. Typical Trumpiness, not very well thought through and kind of clumsy. So I don't know, but do expect this fee to come about. I just don't know when. Okay, so we'll have to see when that happens. The other sort of interesting thing, non-DV related, I wanted to mention this week is yesterday. I think it was yesterday. Trump and his friends threw another sort of ringer in the spanner in the works, you might say, in introducing a $100,000 fee for H-1Bs. Now, many of you are not sort of coming to the States on the H-1B process. I understand that it's mainly technology workers from India that take advantage of that program. And yes, that program is exploited to commercial gain in the wrong way. I myself came on H-1B visas, earlier in my career. When I came back in 2014, that was also on an H-1B visa, and so I've been through the process a couple of times. It's a pretty awful process. But to add, these days it's an awful process because it takes a long time. You apply, there's a lottery process. Too many people apply speculatively. There's a lottery draw for H-1B and so on, and then eventually, it might be sort of October or November before you're actually able to bring that employee into work. So, for the people waiting for that process, it is brutal. For the companies who actually have a genuine need to bring in workers, it's a slow and inefficient process. They've made some things better. The H4, the spouse of the H1, can now work. Didn't used to be able to work when I was using H1Bs. So, my wife, for instance, when we first came in 2014 as a married couple, she was on an H4 at that point, and she couldn't work through that H4 visa. So, that was obviously a downside. Now, we actually got our green cards that same year, so it wasn't really a problem for us. But it's not, the program has been improved over time, but it's still exploited heavily through the oversubscription. So the $100,000 fee, it's kind of, again, it's sort of Trump looking at a problem and his people looking at a problem, and then coming up with a really bad solution for the problem, and just trying to make a ton of money for America, which is, he thinks he's doing a good thing. But it's just, this is such a slap in the face to our trading partners in countries like India. Actually, I feel like this is a very deliberate attack against India and a threat towards India. I wouldn't be at all surprised to see Trump back down on this. The executive order that he signed was full of horrible mistakes. Just typical amateur, I think. They just do a crappy job of stuff, really. They really do. But anyway, So that's gonna be an interesting thing as well to see what happens on the H1 side. But you can definitely see the sort of, with the general, feeling here is very anti-immigrant, very anti-temporary worker, anti, just anti-world stuff. It's all about, they say America first, but America first is actually putting America second in so many ways. America is slipping down the rankings of countries that you want to do business with. America is slipping down the rankings of a country that you want to go and be a tourist in, where the tourist industry is being hit very, very hard through anti-American feeling right now. The tariffs are backfiring in a most spectacular way. You've got soybean farmers all over the country screaming because they can't sell their crops, and the tariffs have caused exactly that. So, Trumpism is unfortunately moving at a fast pace, but moving in such a clumsy way that it's causing a lot of problems right now in America, and America is feeling like a strange place to be in at the moment. So with all of that said, some of you could be forgiven for sort of, questioning whether you actually want to come to America or not. I keep saying to people, I think it's going to get better. I hope it's going to get better. Trump will not be around forever. I'm just a bit worried about who comes in after Trump, right? Will the country continue to move in this crazy way? I sure hope not. It's just really bad. Okay, so all right. And the last thing I wanted to talk about before I take some questions was where we're at with the data. Let's have a look at the data. Let's refresh the data for last night. So we have now just over 44,500 visas issued. You can see that there, and let me make that a little bit bigger. Yeah, make that a little bit bigger, and actually Zarth will tell me off if I don't toggle that off. All right, so 44,500 visas issued so far. This number of people in 221G is not dropping as much as it normally would at this time of year. I've explained why. That's the travel ban impact. There's going to be a lot of people who will just time out. The travel ban isn't being removed, obviously. Many people speculated it was going to be removed on September 9th. I told them it wouldn't be removed on September 9th, but still people wanted to speculate that way. Other people have speculated the other 36 countries will be banned again. I told them to not be so sure, and that, it wouldn't be a sort of an obvious path between A to B kind of thing. And again, that's happened. But anyway, 221G numbers are staying high. Refusals are going higher than we've seen in recent years. Again, travel ban impact. And there are about 10,200 cases in ready status. There's only 1,000 cases or so left to be interviewed. We've only got one more week of interviews, basically 10 days of interviews. Not even 9 days of interviews, of which there'll be 1 weekend yet. We've got 7 days of interviews left. So there's not even 1,000 people left to be interviewed in DV 2025. And so, just as I've explained before, we're not going to see the number of issuances reach. It certainly won't reach 48,000. I think it's going to be about 47,000 something. And once you take into account adjustment of status, it means that we'll be throwing away around about 4,000 visas this year, completely wasted. So they've just they've done a shitty thing and ruined people's chances for no good reason, frankly. Okay, let me take some questions. I'm going to see if I can try and take a lot of questions today. Yeah, I talked about the $1 fee. Not a question, but just want to thank for all the work you've done to give us all the best chances in the lottery, especially those of us in the UK. You're very welcome, Husky Nerd. I actually just got, this morning, I got a message from someone in New York City, guy called Matt. And this guy was a DV 2017 case. And I remember his case, funnily enough. I was having conversations with him back in 2016. So this is 9 years ago or so. And he was doing that. He was talking to me on my blog prior to me even sort of doing YouTube channel and that sort of thing. So he mentioned he came by yesterday. He came by yesterday because yesterday he got his citizenship in America. And he said in his message to me, which he put online on my blog, that he wanted to come by and say, thank you and everything that, for how I helped him way back then in 9 years ago or so. He's a guy from Germany in finance, lives in New York City, or he did a couple of years ago, a few years ago at least, and now became a citizen. And so I'm very grateful that someone like that would come back and say thanks all these years later, that he would think of me on the day that he got his citizenship. It's very touching. And perhaps people like Husky Nerd, for example, who's sitting there wondering, why is this freak talking about DV lottery and filing lawsuits on top of, on behalf of people he's never met and that sort of thing? I do it because it's the right thing to do. And occasionally I get an email from someone, 9 years later saying they've just become a citizen, they're having a fabulous life in America. And that makes me, it just makes me very happy. That's the reason I do it, Husky Nerd. Anyway, just trust. Hey, Simon, I got the green card stamp on my passport. Deadline is Fab 1. Fab 1 sounds like, I think it might mean Feb 1. Fab 1, wasn't that to do with that cartoon thing? Want to enter January 12th to the 14th. Will it be safe? The thing is, you have to consider where you're from, right? Is your country about to get banned? And how bad would that ban be? Now, typically, if you've got a visa in your hand, that visa cannot be cancelled or should not be cancelled. But there have been cases before where the government have actually shut down entry to everybody. And so, waiting until the last minute is kind of, not wise. So in general, I have a policy, and we call this the Curtis rule after Curtis Morrison. Is when you get your visa, get your ass to the airport and get into America, because once you've become a green card holder, you're definitely immune from all of those sort of silly things that Trump does, right? But assuming nothing like that happens, then yes, entering 12th to the 14th of January is probably safe. You can have a volcano in Iceland or something blows up and it stops traffic, it stops air traffic for a while. Those sort of things could happen, but generally speaking, you're allowing a couple of weeks. So it's pretty unlikely you would be delayed by air traffic problems for as long as 2 weeks. You can certainly have, though, 2, 3, 4 day delay in air travel. And so, you want to make sure you're not traveling with that later a time, but 12th to 14th, you should be okay. But if you're from a country that might get banned, or you're from a Muslim majority country, for example, then I personally wouldn't be waiting at all. Okay. Is the passport will be necessary for the next DV lottery? I don't know. This is something else where they've gone through a process like the $1 rule. They've gone through a process to announce this change that they would like to make, but it remains unclear to me how they're going to make that change, whether they're going to make that change or not in the next lottery period. The government's not very good at changing their technology, to do things like this. So implementing a $1 rule and implementing the passport rule, it might take them some time to actually do those things. And so, perhaps they're going to delay the whole process in order to implement those things. Perhaps they're going to implement those things. I don't know, is the honest answer. Both of those things, the $1 rule and the passport rule, they are seriously moving ahead with those sort of plans. Yes. Will it impact DV27 or not? I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. Good morning, Joe. You're one of the people that I enjoy reading your messages. Thank you. Thank you for coming by. Just in case, I've always loved your name, just in case. Good to hear you, Britt Simon. Thank you. Felix says it's good evening here in Nairobi. That's excellent. How can someone demonstrate the proof of residency at the US Embassy when applying for a visa that you've been staying for 10 plus years? Well, proof of residency may be to do with your visa status, but it also, if you've been staying in a country for 10 years, you've probably got some sort of paperwork on a lease for an apartment or something, or perhaps you pay electric bills or whatever. And there's something in your name. Perhaps you've got a phone bill in your name. Perhaps your bank, information shows your address, and so on. So there are things that you can do generally with paperwork that proves that you've been a resident there. The residence question obviously is going to become more and more of a big deal, because you may have to prove that you're a resident in order to be interviewed at a foreign country, right? So, this is going to be on people's minds, I think, over DV26, depending on how strict the government are on implementing the new rule about where you can interview. So, basically look for paperwork that proves you've been there. Okay. Any good news about Sierra Leonean national? No good news. I can't see if I was successful. I've put all the correct details, but it says invalid. Debbie, I'm not quite sure. I must have missed the first part. No, I don't know. I can't see any part of your question. So, Debbie Stiles, I don't know what you're actually asking. I don't know what your question is about. Somalia. So, do we have a chance DV26, or we'll stop entering DV26 because we are travel banned? For people in DV 2026, if you're under a travel ban situation, I would delay my application. If I were in that situation, I would delay the application. There's no point in going to the interview simply to be refused straight away, right? Or to be put on 221G and spend all that money to be on 221G. In my opinion, you're better off to delay your interview. Even if your interview is scheduled, just miss it and reschedule it later. You can do that. And hopefully the travel ban will be removed later on, but we just don't know when the ban will be removed. So in the meantime, considering the amount of money that it costs to attend the interview in medical fees and the interview fee itself, I personally wouldn't recommend doing that. I would delay and try and rearrange later if the travel ban is removed. That would be my approach. For DV27 entry period, of course you should enter. Everybody who is travel banned is still allowed to enter. They're still allowed to be selected. They're even still allowed to be interviewed. So yeah, you would enter the new lottery periods, of course, but yeah, a little bit different for whether you do the interview or not. That's going to be the big question, right? Hi, Mr. Brit Simon. I'm from Morocco. What the secrets of success in DB lottery DV27? Okay, Sufyan, the secret. There's a couple of secrets of success. Number one, you can improve your chance of winning the lottery tremendously by remembering to enter the lottery. Right? Number one, enter the lottery. Number two, when you're entering the lottery, tell the truth. The most heartbreaking thing that I've seen many times, and I've lost count, I mean, many times I've seen exactly this, is where people enter the lottery and they ignore the rules, and they, for example, they say they're single when actually they're married, and they expect to, change that later on. They forget to include a spouse or derivative children. Those things, all those things I just said, like claiming to be single when you're actually married, not having a spouse or a child on your entry, all of those things will 100% get you disqualified later on. So to me, it's actually worse to be selected and then be disqualified later. That's worse, in my opinion, than not being selected in the first place. Because by that time, you've spent a year waiting for your interview, you spend all the money on the whole process, you're emotionally invested, and you go along to the interview only to find out that the mistake you made when you entered the lottery is the end of your chance. That's it. There's no way around it. So please do read the instructions and follow the instructions. do not lie on your entry. If you're married, you say you're married. If you're single, you say you're single. If you have children, whether those children are your biological children, whether they live with you or not, whether they're stepchildren, whether they're adopted children, as long as you adopted them over 2 years ago, all of your children have to be included, and you have to have a photo for each and every one of them. And then the photos thing is the other major thing. I've got my lead engineer coming to my house tomorrow to show me the final version of the new photo tool that I'm going to be releasing over the next few days. And I'm hoping we might even press the live button tomorrow. We'll see. But we're pretty close. But the photos are a very high percentage of the cases that are rejected during the lottery draw process. Okay, so let me just put this in perspective for you. If you take all of the numbers for DV25 that were told they were selectees, and you add them all up, there were number ranges of 165,000 number ranges in all of the regions. So, that's in Africa, in Asia, Europe, and so on. All of those number ranges added up to 165,000 number ranges. Now, out of those 165,000, 95,000 or so were holes. Okay, so the holes are 57% of all the DV25 entries were holes, right? That's a staggering number when you think about that. Now, I've seen court records that have said that in DV25, about 10% of the entries, about 2.5 million people, were rejected for fraudulent reasons. That's because of multiple entries and that sort of thing. But that means that about 10% being rejected for those fraudulent entries leaves about 47, let's say 45, 47% of entries that are rejected for the other big reason, which is photos. Okay, so if you want to know the secret to success, number one, enter. Number two, tell the bloody truth. And number three, probably as important as anything else, is make sure your photos comply with the rules, right? Now, you can probably do that yourself, but I'm creating or releasing an app which uses AI of the same sort that that the government uses to apply all of the rules that they apply to reject the photos, to reject the cases based on the photos. And don't forget, you can have the main selectee might have a compliant photo. Maybe the spouse has got a compliant photo, but the child's photo might be non-compliant. That will reject the whole case. Okay, so you've got to be careful with photos, and a lot of you are not being careful. I promise you, there are many people who are just being way too relaxed about the photos. So my photo app is going to help with that. And if we can reduce that 45% rejection rate based on the photos, that's almost like doubling your chance of success. And yes, it will cost you a few dollars per photo, but it's going to do all of those AI checks that the government would do, so that you're not going to get rejected. So essentially, it's going to double your chance of selection. You'd be a fool not to use it, frankly. So there you go. So that would be my advice to you. So there you go. Yazan, let's answer the question for you. Do you think there will be new countries added to the ban before the year ends? There may be new countries added to the ban. That wouldn't surprise me at all. Before the year ends, yeah, probably wouldn't surprise me either. I just don't know which ones. And I don't think it'll be all of those 36 countries waiting in the wings. Those countries were threatened by the Trump administration to do certain things. Some of those countries won't be able to comply with those threats. And so, yeah, there may be a couple more of those countries added. We'll have to wait and see. No other updates on the travel ban. No, it's not being brought down. Curtis Morrison's case had one part of the win. He's won for he won for his plaintiffs. He didn't manage to bring down the travel ban, but for his plaintiffs, he got a minor part of the win. But that win has been appealed this week as well. So the government are not willing to stop fighting about that. So, kind of a nuisance. Ahmed, hi Simon, been under 221G for DS5535 since September 9th. Totally lost hope as DV25 year will end so soon. That's true. Well, fingers crossed for you, Ahmed. I can't give you any advice other than saying, yeah, you just have to wait till the last minute. And I hope it goes well for you. Any development about the consulate change ban? No, Barris. Nobody is fighting that from a legal point of view, as far as I'm aware. That rule will stay. The question is, how strict will they be on implementing the rule, both at KCC and at the embassies? We have to wait and see for that. So no real news about that. Dev Conte, I want to thank you for your guidance. It gave me a chance for an interview, and my visa has been approved. More good news. Lovely. I want to ask about the process. I'm in F2A category. I want to start my process in 23. No news. We're just waiting for the visa. Nida, I don't talk about anything other than DV lottery. Basically, I spoke about H1B a few moments ago, but DV lottery is what I talk about. I don't advise on anything else. Web Fiji, maybe a stupid question since there are different visa times, but can something like what happened to H1B visa happen to DV as well, as a presidential executive order without Congress approval? Yes, it can. So the way it works is Trump can't invent new laws, right? He's not the lawmaker. We've got three branches of government. The laws are supposed to be sort of created by Congress, right? And then laws then passed by Congress has to go through both houses. A new law is called a bill, right? A bill has to go through both houses and agreed by both houses, and then goes to the president for signature. That's the way laws are created. However, the chief executive, the president, is empowered to run the country with certain executive privileges over certain things. Now, he can't create new laws, but he can say, if there's an existing law, he can interpret those laws in the way he wants to do it, right? Now, if somebody wants to argue about the way he's interpreted law or some sort of executive order he's made, then somebody who has been wronged by that law can raise a lawsuit, and then that goes through the judicial branch, possibly all the way up to the Supreme Court. So Trump gets to sort of write any executive orders he wants. He could write an executive order tomorrow saying nobody is allowed to eat eggs, right? Nobody can enjoy cornflakes, whatever the hell he wants to write. And then somebody who's from the egg industry could say, hey, you've just decimated my business because you say people can't eat eggs. I think that's unlawful, and therefore I'm going to sue you. And so somebody could sue, right? And that's how the process works. The problem is that during the period of time when that lawsuit is going through, the egg ban will probably be in place, right? And so Trump is able to cause chaos. Previous presidents have behaved similarly to an extent. This executive order sort of power began a few presidents ago. And there's been some pretty famous cases where presidents have tried to change law through executive order. That generally gets attacked and brought down. But they are given quite a bit of power to do certain things, and Trump has just gone nuts with the executive orders, obviously. He's just issuing a load of stupid executive orders, but it takes time to take them down each time. So could they do something like this for DV lottery? Well, I take it almost as a good sign. I saw somebody, I think it was Stoic, that was saying this week, that was saying it's almost a good sign that instead of the $250 fee that they wanted to do, they've implemented this $1 fee. And that shows that the DV lottery is going to continue. Sort of true. I sort of agree with that. However, I do think once they've implemented a fee, it becomes easier to say each year, oh, we're going to increase that fee. So it's $1 this year. And then they say, oh, okay, it's going to be $5 or it's going to be $50. It's easier to increase a fee that is now accepted. And by starting at $1, they have made sure that there isn't too much of a fuss being made about that. right? So it's an easy way, a thin end of the wedge, you might say, to open the door towards a bigger fee for DV lottery. Now, from a fiscal point of view, the way DV lottery is paid for, by the way, is through the $330 payment payments that people make at the consular offices, right? Now, if you totaled up, there's about 60,000 cases a year that pay the $330. If you total that up, it's about what, $20 million or something. About $20 million, right? If my math is right, roughly 60,000. Yeah, I think I've got my math right. It's about $20 million, right? So if there were 20 million entries paying $1 each, then you would get as much from the $1 fees as you're getting from the $330, right? And so effectively what the government have said through this announcement is that they're doubling the amount of revenue being taken in for this program by this $1 fee. That's not quite true, because it's not going to be per person, it's going to be per entry. But nevertheless, they're in the right sort of ballpark. Let's say they raise $15 million to $20 million. Now, some people will be saying, oh, the government's just trying to grab more money. $15 million is nothing. That's peanuts. It's like, it doesn't even register on the big picture of the sort of money that the American government has. They're not doing it because they want to make money, but the DV lottery process is supposed to pay for itself through the fees that are collected. And so, that's sort of the justification behind it. We'll have to see whether this makes sense or not. Okay. What will happen for DV lottery winners of travel ban countries? Wouldn't they even get scheduled for interviews, or they will? They will be scheduled, Faisal, for interviews, because people have got the right to attend the interview and show that they are entitled to an exemption from the ban. The only real exemption that exists, in my opinion, that is reasonably valuable is the one that says if you've got a passport from another country that is not banned. Okay, so if you happen to have, let's say you're an Iranian, but you happen to have a French passport, and because you're also a French citizen, then you can become qualified for through Iran for the entry, but you would present your French passport in the interview, and that's the one you would travel on, and that's how you could be exempted from the ban. So that's the sort of thing that can happen. Therefore, they set up the interviews for every person, whether they're travel banned or not. Okay. Let's see. Uncle B, I'm one of your biggest fans, says Confusion27. That's nice. A Mahutu says, hi Simon, thank you for all the interview, all the info and tips. We never tire. We appreciate you. You might not know it, but you've changed lives from poverty to abundance, especially from an African point of view. Thank you for saying that. I'm quite sure that's true. When I think about some of the people who are coming from, particularly from Africa, but parts of Asia and even parts of Europe, people are coming from relatively poor situations, and in the case of Africa, extremely poor situations, to live in a country where you really can make a hell of a lot of money here, if that's what you want to do, or you can have a very comfortable life, and your life expectancy increases, and your ability to play around with toys and things increases. It's an abundant life here in America, and I wish more people had that opportunity. I think it's a great shame that Americans, at least some of them, don't understand how big a country this is. There is plenty of opportunity for people to come. We're not full yet, and without immigration, this country actually will lose ground to other countries. And we may as well realize that immigration is a driving force for a country. And other countries are going to sort of overtake us, have overtaken us. China is massive compared to America. India is massive compared to America. But also look at countries that are increasing very rapidly. There's countries, even in Africa, Nigeria, for example, is forecast to have a massive population increase over the next 20, 30 years. And, you know, what happens when those countries grow and all of those people bring skills and drive and enthusiasm and energy? Those countries will grow, and America will cease to be, you know, the world's leading power in various ways, economically or militarily or anything else. You know, America needs to learn this lesson. America needs to understand that immigration is good for America because it will drive growth in America. And we have the natural resource, we have the space, we have the economic system. You know, if the Republicans don't F it up, we've got the right situation to drive our country tremendously through immigration. So, you know, but, you know, unfortunately, Republicans right now are in the driving seat, and they are effing it up. But, you know, hopefully they won't be around forever. Rayan, thank you for your guidance and patience. You really helped us through the DV25 journey I became issued yesterday. Thank you again. You're very welcome. $1 is not too big, but they will implement it when it starts. Yeah, we'll see. Hi, Simon. What's the point of selecting more than the required number of required visas? Imagine false hopes it gives to those people with high case numbers. Yes, absolutely. Now, I'll tell you that even in a perfect year, in order to issue 55,000 visas, let's say the number is 55,000. In order to let me show you what I mean, rather than sort of explaining it necessarily. You'll see here that they've invited 65,000 people almost, and they've issued so far 44,000 visas. There are thousands of people, around about 8,000 to 9,000 of these 10,000, who will simply not show up for their interview, right? Now, this number, in order to ask 65,000 people to come to an interview, those people had to have filled out their DS-260. There's a high percentage of people that never even fill out the DS-260. So then they invite 65,000 people, and of those 65,000, I can tell you that probably around about 9,000 are never going to show up for their interview. They just not going to show up. That's been made worse through the travel ban for sure. But the no-shows is a normal part of the process. Also, the non-responses, which is people that don't send in the DS-260, that's a normal part of the process. So you have to select more than the 55,000 in order to issue the 55,000. You have to select something like 80 or 90,000 people as a minimum, because if you select 90,000 people and only 75,000 of those, or let's say 78,000 of those, fill in the DS-260s, and only 70,000 of those are processed and scheduled, and of those 70,000, let's say 8,000 or 9,000 don't even show up for their interview, and some people get rejected at the interview because they were not qualified and so on. You need that big funnel. You need a big funnel at the top. So it probably takes 90,000 selectees, maybe 100,000 selectees to issue the 55,000 visas. It probably takes that sort of number. What it doesn't take is 131,000 people or 140,000 people. It doesn't need that many. So they are over selecting. But what's happening is they keep driving the numbers higher and higher and higher because Africa still keeps failing to meet its quota. And so they drive the numbers higher in Africa and in every other region consequently. And so, yeah, we're in a bit of a, we're going round and round and round. And of course, the travel ban chaos, the chaos that Trump causes, pretty much guarantees that we're going to see several more years where they will over-select. Because, if a president can go and travel ban a bunch of people, then, you need to have more people in backup. So that's what they do. It's logic to select the required number of visas, carry out interviews, and then do second draws if there's visa shortfall. Yeah, you're saying the same thing. I understand your logic. I get it. But that's what I was explaining. News about the UK lawsuit for DV26. So Marcos, our lawsuit is going to be. I just emailed with Curtis and the team of lawyers this week to check when we're going to make our change. I think we're probably going to be making our change to our lawsuit over the next week or so. I don't have exact control over that. And it's not strictly speaking necessary that we have that in place for the next meeting, which is, I think, on at the end of this week. But in my mind, I'd feel a bit more confident if we had that. So I'm hoping that Curtis will be able to amend our lawsuit this week to add some DV 2026 candidates. Our lawsuit can't just be closed out, though, by the judge simply because we haven't amended it to add the DV26 candidates. It won't, there's a part of the, if you've been watching the case, there was one filing that said we have the right to change the lawsuit. We've agreed the right to amend some timelines, and as an agreement as us agreeing to amend the timelines, we also said, yes, we'll agree to amend the timelines, but we're also going to amend the lawsuit. There's going to be some additions, some changes made in the lawsuit. And that's where we're going to add some DV 2026 candidates. I've put a dozen names forward to Curtis of people that agreed to be on that lawsuit and named on that lawsuit if necessary. And so that's what we're going to do. We're going to amend the lawsuit that way. I am 100% certain we're going to win the lawsuit piece for DV26. I'm 100% certain that the mistake was made for DV26 as well. And I'm 100% certain that we're going to fix it for DV26. So no real worries there. It literally is just a matter of going through the process. No big problem there. The other piece of news is I've had a wonderful time hearing from people that have been approved for their visas. Lots of UK winners have got through. We had 3 adjustment of status cases approved as well. There's a 4th one I'm aware of that needs to be approved. But there are a number of people who've gone through consular processing in London Embassy and have been approved. One in Abu Dhabi has been approved. There's one case I know that will have been rejected by now. I'm not sure which number it was, but there was a Ghanaian guy who claimed to be English, who then married an Italian girl, and between the two of them, they thought they were going to get approved. They've definitely been rejected. But other than that, I think most people have been very, very fairly processed by the government. They've been very rapidly processed. Their DS-260s were processed in like 24, 48 hours. They were scheduled for interviews very, very quickly. Their interviews went through pretty hitch-free, and many have been issued already. So, yeah, it's a good result. I mean, it would already have been enough to justify in my mind the cost that I spent on it. It would have been worth it already. I was helped tremendously in the GoFundMe effort. People helped me financially with the cost of the lawsuit, and that offset the cost. It still did leave some cost to me, but it's fine. I'm absolutely happy with with what I've spent for what we've achieved. It's already been a winner, and the DV26 part will just add to it. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. I'm not quite sure how it all sort of pan out, but I know it's just going to be good news, really. So there you go. Abu, how you doing? Hi, Simon. If October 16th is the due date before the $1 entry fee is implemented, does it mean those who will enter early won't pay, or they will reschedule the date so everyone will pay? I'd be very surprised if they would start off the entry period without the fee and then implement the fee halfway through. That seems to be incredibly unlikely in my mind. So I think they either delay it or they sort of schedule this change for next year. That's, at that point. Or maybe they just implement it, as I said earlier, maybe they just implement it without the 30 days notice. That's possible too. It's just that they open the door to a lawsuit by doing that. So, Hi, Simon. After submitting the DS-260 for DV26 in May, I went on a trip to Greece for vacation. Should I unlock and update my DS-260? Thank you. No, you typically don't do that. Generally speaking, when you submit the DS-260, it needs to be accurate on the day that you submit it, right? If you have to unlock the DS260 to make some sort of other change, then you would also update the other things like travel history for your trip to Greece, right? But generally, you don't have to update for all of the sort of trivial events that happen. Trivial events is things like you change address, you change your job, you add some more travel history, you add another social media account. All of those things are trivial events, okay? You don't unlock for those trivial events, okay? No need to unlock for those things. If you get married or if you have a baby, you are required to unlock and add that change. That's a significant change. It's a very material change. It's a life event that has happened. You got married, you changed your marital status. You need to unlock and you need to modify your marital status. You had a baby. You need to unlock and add the baby, right? There are things that you have to unlock for, but the trivial events you don't unlock for, right? You just correct those if you are unlocking the form anyway, okay? All right. Amara says they refused to give us a visa because of the restrictions, because of the travel ban. Yeah, shameful. I'm sorry that happened to you, but it was pretty predictable. Simon, do the DV lottery winners before winning have a pattern we can try to copy or emulate? Yes, 100% of them entered the lottery, Confusion 27. 100% of them did that. So that's one pattern. And then, like I said earlier, they entered the lottery, they followed the instructions, hopefully, and they took a good photo. That's it. That's the only thing. Other than that, the lottery process is a random draw. So there isn't a pattern like, a certain day of the week or a certain time of the day that gives you an advantage. There isn't anything like that. There isn't an advantage for people that enter in the first few days or the last few days of the lottery or in the middle or any particular other time. There's no advantage you can gain that way. It is a random process, a random selection. And random really does mean random these days. So, hi, Simone. Simone is a girl's name, so I think it means Simon. Are you aware of any OC interviews happening? Right now, we don't have SEAC data feedback, right? So we know what's happening in DV 2025 because we have the SEAC data, but we don't know for DV 26. We don't know how many interviews are being scheduled. So I hear little rumblings here or there. I know, for example, there's a guy with an OC 200 number range whose case is processed, but he's not got a Sydney interview. That guy asked me a question about that this morning. So that's kind of, there's kind of evidence out there that maybe Sydney are going slow on interviews at the moment, but we can't really be sure about that because we don't have the data that really confirms it. So I very, very much doubt that there have been no interviews in OC, put it like that. That would just not be logical. Okay. David Burdley. Hi, Simon. Should I have a police record if I lived in China for 5 months and 3 weeks as an exchange student? No, because you're obviously saying that 5 months and 3 weeks being just under 6 months. But if you read the instructions properly, it asks you for periods of time where it's 12 months and above from a previous country, right? It's not 6 months. You have to read the instructions properly. It's 6 months for your current country of residence, 6 months for your nationality country. But for other countries where you're not a national of that country, then the time period is 12 months. However, let me just rephrase your question. Let me just sort of put this in a different way for you. Let's say you were asking me the same question of 11 months and 3 weeks. Now, and so you could, presumably, you could argue to the consular officer that you were not there for the 12 months and therefore he shouldn't be asking you for the police certificate. To be honest, that would be the wrong argument to have, right? If you are in a country for close to the limit, at the point at which you would need a police certificate, then unless you can categorically prove that you entered on this day and you left on that day with passport stamps and everything else, then you should just say, okay, I'll get a police certificate. Just get the bloody police certificate, right? Even if you can categorically prove that you left within the sort of the time period, why would you have that argument? Just go and get the bloody police certificate and and provide it. If the police certificate, if you've done nothing wrong in that country, then there's nothing to worry about. It's a bit of paperwork hassle. So go get it, right? Don't try and be cute with the days, right? And being just under the timeline. So if the police certificate is requested and you were only in that country for 11 months, just go and get it. Just go and get the police certificate, right? And prepare that way. Assume it's going to be required. Okay. Do you think $1 fee is safe from DV27? I'm currently living in a country that has huge payment transaction issues. I don't think I can say it's definitely not going to be implemented for DV27. It could be implemented for DV27. So, be aware of that. Joe Estefan, that's a donation. Thank you. I appreciate that. As always, thanks a lot for the work. I'm actually surprised that you're in favor of the $1 fee. Doesn't it exclude people who have no debit card? Yeah, that is a problem. So I'm in favor of the fee. I can see the advantage of it, put it like that, because it will reduce fraud to some extent. But yes, I recognize it's going to be difficult in some countries, to make those fees. And I should imagine that what we'll see is there's a lot of countries where people go to these internet cafes and they do their entries there. And probably the people running those internet cafes are probably going to add this to their services, right? So they'll say, okay, I'll pay the payment for you. You give me the $1 equivalent. I'll pay the payment. I'll do it in front of you. But you're going to give me not just the $1, but I'm going to charge you $2, right? So it'll end up costing people more money. And yes, that's a bit of a problem, but it's not a huge amount of money. I think in most countries that's a sort of an affordable cost. And I've actually looked into it recently for the photo payment thing. I wanted to know, for the photo tool that I'm going to release, how big a burden is it on people to be paying a few dollars for a photo, right? And I found out the cost of getting a photo taken at a photo booth in, I can't remember where it was, somewhere in Africa, and I figured out it was about $4.80 or something to just go to a photo booth and have it taken. So there are some costs involved in entering the lottery. $1, it seems to me, is sort of acceptable. I'm kind of okay with it. But yes, I am a little bit worried, like you're mentioning, about how those payments will be made in some countries. Okay. Anyway, thanks for the donation. Appreciate it. Pedro, I'll go and get a coffee with that. What's that? Swiss francs, $5? Yeah, I can get a coffee with that. Is there any news about the applicable countries? No changes. Amara, yeah, you were refused because the presidential proclamation. Yes, I understand. Okay. How much time? F2? Yeah, I don't know. Confusion. If you have no credit card, you probably shouldn't be in the USA, to be fair. A healthy society has a credit card. Ugh. No, confusion. I don't agree with that statement. So I've got a video about this, talking about credit cards. For a lot of people in Africa, they're not going to have credit cards on a day-to-day basis, right? Doesn't mean that they're not living a healthy life, or they're financially not ready to come to America. Of course they can come to America and they can learn how to use things like credit cards. Now, I will say that the majority of Americans don't understand how on earth to use credit cards to their advantage. And that's why I've produced videos in the past trying to explain to people how you should use these things carefully. But don't try and tell me that most Americans know what they're doing with credit cards, because most Americans don't. Most Americans get themselves into horrible debt. And 75 to 80% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. So it's not that Americans are so smart with money, to be perfectly honest, which is why there's a big opportunity. My nose is really itching this one. There's a big opportunity for people to come here and make a lot of money, because if you live your life in a sensible way, you can run rings around Americans, right? You really can. They're not as smart as you might think they are. Okay. Agent can use his card to pay for multiple people. Yeah, absolutely. Let's see. Uncle B, is it safe to play DV27? America is too aggressive against immigrants at this time. Yeah, it is. It's a problem. Confusion. It's a problem. Yeah. So what can I say? Right now, on many days of the week, I wake up in the morning, I read something stupid the government have just done, and I'm like, is this a place I want to be living in? Right now, my only sort of thought process is it's going to get better. Trump will be gone at some point, and his like will be gone. He will be stripped of his power fairly soon. I hope, if the Democratic Party can pull their finger out. He'll be stripped of his power in the midterm elections next year. So, things are going to get better. But I hope so, because if it continues like this, no, this isn't. I mean, I don't need to put up with this shit. I'd like to feel proud of the country where I live and feel like they're not abusing people left, right, and center. So, and if this country continues to abuse people left, right, and center, then it won't be a place I would want to live, frankly. So there you go. All right. My daughter added as a dependent, and she is currently in the US for her undergraduate degree. We provided same host address as mine and not her college. Is that okay, or do we need to give her college address? Either way is fine. You can use the same address that you plan to use. That's fine, no problem there. Just have a think, Sonam, about how you're going to process. Is she going to come home to your country and interview with you as consular processing, or are you going to try and process her in the USA? I would always recommend bringing her home. Frankly, it's a much easier process. But there is another process for her as a derivative to process in America, but it's complicated. I wouldn't do it personally. Okay. If I'm a citizen of a banned country but having a passport of a non-banned country, am I qualified to use the other passport of that country to travel? Yes, you are. That's exactly how the exemption can be operated. Yes. Okay. Will the $1 fee be used to improve the security or integrity of the DV lottery system? No. It'll just disappear into a big bucket of money to be used God knows how. No, I don't think they'll reinvest in the system. No. I am gift from Liberia. You're a gift. I would like to know as to whether the State Department has reached a conclusion to reintroduce the passport into the DV program. No conclusion has been made yet. They haven't implemented that as a final rule, and it remains to be seen whether they have time or not to implement that in DV 2027. We'll have to see. What does it mean that the applicant will now have their interviews in their home country or residence? So the government for some time have preferred that you interview in the place where you live, right? They don't want people to be traveling around embassy shopping, we call it, trying to find the best embassy to interview at. They don't want that. And so now they've implemented rules to try and cut that down. Whether they are successful in that or not remains to be seen. Okay. Dear Simon, when do you think we can expect your application? Very, very soon, Narek. I hope you're well, by the way. Nice to see you. I always like seeing your photo with your very formal look there. But yes, like I said earlier, my lead developer is coming over tomorrow to show me where we're at, and I think we're pretty close. The payment system has taken much longer than I thought it would do. The technology has been working for a long time. We had that working back in, I don't know, I want to say July. I mean, the early version of this was working, without the front end and so on. It was working back in July. We did the Figma stuff. That was probably early August. Did the designs, no, probably even late July. I don't know. I'll have to look back, but it's taken a while longer than I thought or hoped. And our deadline for releasing it was originally the beginning of September. We've blown that by 3 weeks or so. So, but I figure as long as I'm ahead of the government in terms of the announcement, I should be okay. We'll see. Joe Stefan, another donation. You don't have to give me a donation every time you ask me a question, Joe. It's nice of you, but no need for that. Could you please explain administrative search? Not sure of the actual name. I.e., they detain at arrival, ask you questions which might delay entry for months if they decide to do more thorough search. Okay. I think you're talking, Joe, about the actual process at the immigration at the border. Now, I have to say, I've not heard any stories of new immigrants going through this. This is generally happening to people on non-immigrant visas. The Border Patrol officers have certain rights, which are frankly pretty extreme. They can, for example, ask you to unlock your phone and for them to look through your phone, right? And by looking at your phone, they would look at all of your social media accounts and they could see all the photos you took and that sort of thing. So if you've got any photos on your phone that you shouldn't have, that show you taking a tour of, Kim Jong-un's home or something, you probably shouldn't be traveling with that phone, right? You shouldn't be traveling with access to that sort of information. Your social media accounts, you should probably be careful of what you say in these days if you're a non-immigrant in particular. If you're an immigrant, those things, and even as a citizen, actually, those searches can still happen. Now, they say, give me your password to unlock your phone. You can either give them the password and unlock the phone, or they can take your phone and they can try and hack into it. So it's up to you whether you want to cooperate with them or not. Generally speaking, I would recommend cooperation, but with a little bit of preparation. Now, if it's me, I'm bloody minded. I'm going to be coming through immigration saying, I hate Trump. Trump's a scumbag. He's a piece of shit. I don't like that. And and I've got immigration lawyers on speed dial if you want to give me hassle. But I'm a citizen, right? Even as a green card holder, I probably would have done that. But I'm a citizen, which means that the Border Patrol officers don't have the power to stop me coming in the country. They don't even have that power, right? So, and I'm not worried about Trump. Trump can do whatever the hell he wants. And he can kiss my ass if he thinks he's going to scare me. That's just me. I'm if you tell me I can't do something, particularly if you're in power, I'm probably more likely to try and do that thing, right? So if you tell me I'm not allowed to have freedom of speech and say whatever the hell I want, I'm going to be more outrageous. I'm going to tell you more and more to F you to your face, right? So, but I've always felt that way. For example, and most of this country felt this way, right? It's been hilarious to watch the Republican Party in this country bend themselves into pretzels by taking away people's right of freedom of speech, because they used to argue for freedom of speech. So it's so hilarious. But anyway, that's, I think, the main part of the administrative search that you're talking about. And again, I think we're talking about the same thing. It's mainly that sort of process that can happen at the border through the Border Patrol officers. In general, you want to cooperate with the Border Patrol officers. They're generally just decent people trying to do a job, right? If you meet an asshole, I'm sorry, it does exist. There are people out there who've been amped up by all of this anti-immigrant rhetoric. And some of those people, some of those idiots work for Border Patrol, for sure. Not all of them, but some of them. And so, some of them are going to be a bit more of a pain in the ass. Depending on your situation, you should probably just, don't follow my example necessarily. Just get through and have a quiet life, right? Okay. What are my chances of immigrating to USA if one of my family members has a support from me and I don't have 5K to 10K in the back? Uncle B would appreciate if you answered. In that situation, you really need to have an American resident or citizen, a lawful permanent resident, a green card holder, or a citizen, fill out an I-134 for you. If you go to my blog, in fact, just Google the words Brit Simon 134, you'll find an article where I explain everything about the I-134 and how that's used in DV lottery cases in scenarios like you're explaining. Okay. Felix, hi Britt. On DV entry form, is birth city important? The checkbox has it. Don't find. Okay, it's not that America only acknowledges big cities. No, it's not that. They want you. They want you to give a recognizable, searchable name for where you were born, because they want to check: is that place, is that town, city, province, or whatever, still in the country where it was when you were born? So, has a border shifted, and so that place now is no longer in the country that you represented as your country of birth, right? That's really what they're looking into. There's also a record keeping aspect of this. Generally speaking, births, deaths, and marriages are registered within provinces, within cities, and so by getting the city name where you were born, they know which records to go and check. That's the other reason they ask, right? But that's basically it. It's not that you have to be born in a big city. No, not at all. Just do the best you can with that. Okay. I've submitted my DS260 at August, but my case numbers fall under 10,000. Asia. I'd be called during the first time as case number 10,000. I'll be called a bit late. You'll be called late because your case wasn't submitted till August. Imagine all the DS260s that were submitted in May, June, July. They're all in front of yours, right? There's a big backlog. So out of 130,000 people or whatever that might have been selected for DV26, all of those people, or a large majority of those people, got their DS260s in ahead of yours, and therefore you're going to be waiting in a backlog for your form to be opened and then processed. Okay, so yes, you can expect a delay. Now, how long that delay will be, I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. Okay. Has the passport rule been confirmed? 19th was yesterday. No, it's not being confirmed. And so the end of the notice period, or the public comment period, was yesterday. But then they had to wait a few days and then have a period of time where they implemented the rule later on. So they, are they going to delay? I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. We just have to wait. Marker. If you don't have that simple amount of money, you shouldn't be applying to go to the USA. People who don't have enough money are clearly lazy and unemployed. That's a terribly incorrect statement there, Marco. It just shows your ignorance. There are plenty of people, decent people, hardworking people who come from poor countries where they don't have a lot of money. It does not mean that they are lazy and unemployed. So I'm sorry you're ignorant, but maybe you should get a little bit smarter, and not say such stupid things. Really, don't label people ignorant. Lazy and unemployed because they're poor. That's ignorant, right? Do you understand that? It frustrates me when I see people saying stupid things. What happens if you missed your interview? Can I wish to reschedule it at any time? You can reschedule interviews that you've missed. Yes. I don't recommend that people miss their interviews. I have to say it's better to not miss your interviews, ideally. But you can reschedule if you need to. Can be done. Hello, Mr. Simon. I don't have a marriage certificate, but we have done the traditional introduction. I'm from Nairobi, Kenya. So should I enter married and look for cert later, or enter single and get married? Oh man, this is a difficult one. Why it's difficult is this. In different countries, there are different laws that pertain to traditional marriage, right? In some countries, traditional marriage is given quite a lot of legal power, importance, and the law recognizes those traditional marriages. In some places, however, you need to go through a civil process, right? Now, what I would do if I were you is go through that civil process if such a process is necessary in your country, and only then would I claim to be married, right? but it depends on the country. I can't make a blanket, sort of comment about this and for it to be right in every country. So you have to think about the laws in your country and the marriage process that you went through so far. Does that give you legal marriage rights in your country? That's the test, basically. Or is there a second step to that marriage process that you have to undergo in order to have those legal rights? Okay. Don't claim to be married if you're not actually married. Okay. My wife and I have foster parent status to our 2 under 18-year-old children. What would be the best to specify in the application? You can't take foster children. The law with regard to adopted children is that at the interview, you must be able to show paperwork to show you adopted those children at least 2 years earlier than the interview date, right? Foster children, unfortunately, are not your children. They're not your biological children. They're not your adopted children. They're not stepchildren, and so you can't include them in the application. And that could be a problem. And the thing is, you can't just suddenly go out and adopt them now because it won't give you enough time period before the interview. So yeah, you probably don't. I mean, in that situation, you're not going to leave those kids. So you probably don't want to enter the DV lottery is my answer. Okay. Luckman, I'm curious to know if any dual nationals from banned countries have been given a visa. Yes, that has happened. Narek, if DV26 has a similar share of the travel ban selectees as DV25, about 30K may not get visas. Could this lead to a second draw? I don't think it's that high, Narek. With the 19 countries, I don't think it's as high as 30K. I'd be interested to know that number. You know, the main ones, Afghanistan, Yemen, Iran, obviously. A very high percentage of Asia is travel banned, but not as a percentage of the world total. I don't think it's 30K. But to your point, it can have a very big impact, let's say. Now, the problem is they can't really sort of do a second draw to replace those people because those people are theoretically able to re-enter if the travel ban, or not re-enter, but able to progress their cases if the travel ban is taken down, right? So the government won't try and replace those 30K people if there were 30K. They wouldn't try and replace them through a second draw. That we would just have an underfilling. So yeah. It's a bit of a mess, right? Hey Simon, do you have any guess when they're going to publish the DV26 winner distribution per country? I have no idea. I was very surprised they didn't do it in the October visa bulletin. So yeah, very weird. We'll have to wait and see. I don't know what they're doing. I'd love to know the background of that. But we may see it, by the way, at the DV lottery statistics page. We should keep an eye on that as well. We do. So yeah, if that changes, then I'll let you know there. But I don't know when it will be published. I won the DV lottery 2026 from Morocco. My case number is 70K. Do I have any chance for the number to be concurrent, considering that up to now no interview dates have been scheduled for Moroccan? Firstly, you don't know that there's no scheduled interviews for Moroccans, but I take the point. 70K sounds like a high number, but we don't really know how high it really is, right? So you have to wait and see. Right now, we don't have enough information, but it does sound like a high number and therefore risky. Okay. Is the UK in DV Lottery 2027? I think it will be, Ryan, but we have to wait for the official announcement. Okay, but from a numbers point of view, from an understanding the rules point of view, I think it's still in. Okay, Eden Life, greetings from this extreme. Just joining the live chat. I earned some countries are to be banned. Will it affect DV26 winners or start from DV27? The countries that are banned are already being affected. It started straight away in DV25, and it will affect DV26 people. but it doesn't affect the entry process. It affects the processing, the issuance of the visa and the ability of that person to enter the USA or not. So those people are still included in the entry process and the draw process and the interview process and so on. Okay. Okay. I'm filling DS260 from US from my family overseas on the first page. Should I select third-party agent when asked who's filling the form? I wouldn't even bother with that. I get so many questions on that. I wouldn't even bother. It doesn't matter who fills in the form, really. I don't know why they asked that question. So I wouldn't bother with that unless you really want to. Echo, have you heard anything about the 2026 DV lawsuit? Have I heard anything? It's like I don't know. You know, I am the person that's doing the lawsuit, right? We're about to amend in order to include some DV 2026 winners on there to make sure we have standing and can continue the argument. Oh, that was weird. That went blank. But yes, so I think that's going to, we're about to file that amended complaint. Okay, a couple more questions. Yes, Robert, I have the service of receiving green cards. You can email me or you can contact me at brittsimonsays.com and I'll forward you information about that. You got your passport last week. Yeah, okay. Yeah. So yes, put a message on brittsimonsays.com saying you'd like to use the address service and I'll email you the information. Is your photo screening app ready today? No, not quite today, John. It'll be very, very shortly. Was it determined if there are Cuba winners in DV26? 100% sure there are Cuban winners in DV26. As part of my lawsuit, I actually included the selected letter from a Cuban winner. It's 100% sure they've included Cubans. They've screwed up. I know exactly how they screwed up, done up. So yeah, it's for sure. What's the best and cheapest ways to rent there for the first few weeks? You can either do an Airbnb type situation where you rent an apartment. That's pretty good. It's good for a few weeks. You can also rent an executive hotel. When you talk about an executive apartment, you're talking about an apartment like at a hotel, usually a little apartment that's fully furnished. You go in there, it's got a couch, it's got a TV, it's got bed and bedding, it's got knives and forks and plates and everything else. It's ready to use. It's an executive apartment. Basically, I used to use these when I was traveling a lot. And you're going to be in a location for 2 or 3 months. You don't have time to go. You don't want to go and buy all that stuff and set up an apartment. You just want to move into an apartment, have it all sort of set up and furnished for you. And the answer to that is things called executive apartments. And so you can Google those. And it's sort of like a hotel, but it's a little bit bigger than a hotel room. So it gives you a bit more space. That's probably about the best way. It's a bit more expensive though. You'll probably spend, if a normal apartment costs you, let's say $3,500, which is about what you'd spend on a small apartment where I live, you can expect to spend about $1,000 a month more for the executive option, where you have a lot of flexibility, but you also have all this stuff already there: the TV, the bedding, everything's taken care of for you. It depends on your budget. You can solve a lot of problems in America if you've got some money. If you can throw money at things, you can solve the problem. Airbnb is another good option. Hotel room, is good for a couple of weeks. Actually, my wife and I, when we came here in 2014, we had a hotel room, I think, for the first 2 weeks we were here. And it was kind of like an executive hotel, like a suite. But it was myself, my wife, and my daughter, who was only 6 at the time. So it was easy. That's probably about the best way. Okay. DB23 winner, living in the US for 2.5 years. Can the administration revoke existing green cards to meet deportation goals, or would Congress need to act to make that possible? They can't really take your green card away unless you obtain that green card fraudulently in some way. So the thing that they've tried to do with some people recently in high-profile cases is by saying that the green card holder had some sort of hatred or animus against America that they hid during the green card process. Now, as long as that's not an issue, you don't really have a problem. They're not going to be taking green cards away from people unless you are, making a high-profile mess of yourself. So yeah, you'll be okay. Okay. Dunlop says, I don't think $1 is reducing fraud. A person can easily find $10 and make 10 entries. Yeah, but that's not really what we're talking about, Dunlop. We're talking about people that make, many, many entries proactively. They're probably not going to want to make 1,000 entries proactively, right? Because that's $1,000. So yeah, it's a little bit different to your 10 entries scenario. Okay. Watching you from Kenya, just curious question. Should DV photo show shoulders, or where is the photo cropping supposed to reach? It's roughly speaking, as you're looking at me now, it's supposed to show your shoulders, your neck, your eyes, and you're supposed to be looking at the camera like that. And the top of your head is supposed to be just a little bit below. Actually, the measurement parts, we measure the eyes. Where do the eyes appear in top to bottom of the photo? Are you in the middle? Is your head tilted one way or the other? There's a bunch of rules, right? Shouldn't smile, shouldn't wear glasses, shouldn't wear headgear of certain types. So there's a bunch of rules that have to be there. And then it needs to be a clear background. So all of that is taken care of in my photo app. So you'll be about to see that. I'm looking forward to introducing that to you. Okay, this will probably be the last question. So Perry, it's a good question. Kindly clarify, in my family we are 5, my husband and 3 kids, and I will pay $1 per head, or it's me who's submitting. I believe, based on having read this a couple of times, and it's not very clear from the announcement, but I believe it's 1 per entry. In other words, you would pay, and that would include your spouse and your kids, right? That would be 1 fee, right? And so then if your husband also enters, then he would pay, and that would also include them. Okay. Okay, one more question here, because I see there's a donation there, which I appreciate. $9.99. I know exactly how much that is. That's a lot of money. Thank you, Echo. Hi, is there a 2026 lottery update? Also, if I win the lottery and have to wait until 2028 June to permanently move due to the completion of my bachelor's, what are my options? Okay. I did give a 26 lottery update, for UK winners. Basically, we're about to amend the lawsuit. The lawsuit will protect and reinstate the rights of the DV26 winners. There are going to be some DV26 winners from the UK. I have no doubt we're going to win that part of the lawsuit. I don't know why the government are choosing to argue still. It just seems bizarre that they're choosing to argue. But we'll win that part of the argument as well, just as we did for the DV25, right? And we're about to amend the lawsuit this week, I think, but it will happen, right? Now, in terms of your question, when you get approved for the visa, you're given basically a 6-month period. So let's say you interviewed in, let's say, I don't know, March of next year, right? If you interviewed in March, you would have 6 months after that time. It's actually 6 months after the medical. But roughly speaking, you'd have 6 months after that time. So that would be March 26 would be your interview and you're approved. And then 6 months after that, you would have to enter the USA before then. And that's going to be late 26, right? And so then during 26, you'd leave the country again when you came in late 26. You'd come to America, activate your status, and leave America. And then you can keep your green card status alive by coming back after 6 months, or before 6 months has gone by, another 6 months, and you can keep your status alive that way. Or you can file a re-entry permit, which is an I-131, which gives you permission to stay out of the country for up to 2 years. So you'll be able to keep your green card alive until that 2028 date you're talking about. It'll be quite a long time, but you've got options on how to do that, either by coming back and forth, maybe coming back, spending a bit of the time here over the summer or something like that, coming back at Christmas, but you'll have to do a number of trips, right? So the other option is to come here and spend a few weeks here and apply for that re-entry permit, and that gives you that 2 years, right? So there's ways to do it, Echo. You'll be fine, you know. It just depends kind of when you process your original case. All right, fingers crossed for you. All right, okay, we'll call that a day. I've been on for over an hour and a half, so it's enough of me talking. Okay, good luck to everybody who's going for their interviews this week. There are a few more DV 2025 cases, and then we'll see DV 26 starting in about 10 days' time. And within that time, you'll see the photo tool announcement. You'll see hopefully the DV lottery entry for DV 27. There'll be quite a lot of stuff going on over the next couple of weeks. So fingers crossed for all of that. And let's hope Trump manages to not screw anything up for a few more days. You know, we'll just have to wait and see. All right, everybody, keep well. Bye-bye.